Welcome. This is Sidebar. Sidebar, a frank discussion on the law, life, and liberty. Sponsored by the LaHood Norton Law Group. And now, your objection sustained. Your hosts, Karen Klaus and former Bexar County District Attorney, Nico LaHood.
1200 WOAI. This is Sidebar. Please join us every Saturday when you can find us here on WOAI and also on many platforms that you can find at sidebartv.com. Whether you're watching us on Facebook Live or other platforms, please go to that website and you can also become a contributor. This week, hi, former Bexar County DA, Nico LaHood. You know, I was thinking... Your brother ran for DA, the last time, and he was not successful. Is he running again? I just heard about him running for an office again.
Is
it Senator?
He's running against the current incumbent, Steve Allison, as a state representative, and it's turning out to be an interesting race. And I'm glad he's doing it. I mean, we need people that are creating laws and speaking logically and consistently and speaking for their constituents. Unfortunately, there's many things that Mr. Allison is, which just seems like a nice guy. I mean, I've seen him many times out on the campaign trails and just in public. But nice people is not the reason why you're in the state representative. You need to create laws that serve all citizens and bring different viewpoints to a discussion that's very critical, from school choice to DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, which. Mr. Allison, unfortunately, is not for school choice, and he supports his vote. I mean, forget about what you say; it's what you do. Actions speak louder than words, and so it's going to be an interesting as things, heat up. And he's already starting to tag Mark about being a criminal defense lawyer and who he represents. I mean, to me, look, there's a saying amongst trial lawyers: when you have the law on your side, you argue the law. When you have the facts on your side, you argue the facts. When you have neither, you attack the opposing counsel. And so for him to take shots at Mark's profession, like you wouldn't take shots at an ER doctor, treating people that come into the ER. You just, that's what, criminal defense lawyers are needed. When I was a DA, I still supported the profession. I think it's an honorable profession, and they should zealously represent their clients with honor and integrity and ethics and morals. But so it's gonna be interesting. You see people's true colors when you give them power or problems, and we're seeing things come up and they'll continue to come up.
It's a weird line of attack, isn't it? I mean, if you don't want to talk facts because you don't know facts because you're ignorant, that might be forgivable. If you don't want to talk the law because you think it's irrelevant or you don't know anything about the law, that might be forgivable. How about talking about his record? You could always talk about his record, right?
Who's?
Allison's.
Oh yeah, no, it's clear. I mean,
why is he not talking about his record?
He's not for school choice. He supports DEI. I mean. People are shocked when they hear these things. And look, he's welcome to come on the show. I mean, if anybody knows Mr. Allison, and Mark can reach him. Mark they can both come on. Any state rep, we've always encouraged candidates to want to come on the show and share their views and take tough questions. Because this is not a cakewalk. I mean, we're going to ask you questions, but have a discussion. It's not going to be an attack session. He's welcome to come on the show, but he won't. I'm sure Mark will, but they're both welcome on the show. And don't vote for Mark just because he's my brother. I mean, ask questions, call his campaign. Reach out to him, have him come speak to your opinion. He doesn't get a free pass. I mean, I'm not here to coddle anybody, including my brother. He's got to earn his way into that office.
But he doesn't shy from questions either. Mark welcomes him. He doesn't,
Yeah.
Doesn't it seem... go ahead.
If he gets a question he doesn't like, he doesn't pull a Joe Biden and throw a fit, right? I mean,
Come on, man.
He actually engages with the audience, and I think we need more of that, not less. Sorry, go ahead, Karen.
Do you see the huge differences between when you ran for district attorney versus today? I mean, I remember before I even met you, I was doing news at KTSA and looking at you through like a fishbowl window when you were on Jack Riccardi's show. And I remember you saying, I was convicted of
I was not
selling,
convicted.
Or you were accused. Right.
You sound like you worked for them.
No. I didn't know what it was, but when I heard you say that, I was like, what? How can this guy be running for district attorney? Yeah. And then when you won, and I found out more, as time went on, and I found out more and more about you, I was like, this is the dude for the office. I get it. Things have changed. People can change, and I get that. But nowadays, and even with your second run, money had a lot to do with it. Mm-hmm. Backing had a lot to do with it. And sometimes even the truth or the lack of the truth has nothing to do with the campaign.
I've never lied, cheated, or steal to win. In trial, in campaign, in an argument, you got to present the facts. And look, if things are fair game, you are running for public office. Things are going to be public. If you don't like it, stay on the sideline, and that's cool. So I have thick skin. To me, leave the families out of it unless the families are involved. And if a family member steps up and defends you, well, then they stepped into the ring, okay? But there's got to be honor in fights. There's got to be rules of engagement. The rules of engagement today are you have to hate each other to disagree. Let's just talk facts. Hate's such a strong word to me. I understand a biblical mindset of hate and what it does to your heart and your soul. And I've actually experienced hate after the murder of my brother. And so I take it very serious, but I also know what love means too. And so I like engagement. I love debate. I love free speech. I can't stand censorship. And the court of public opinion needs all the information so they can make an educated decision. And in politics today, it's about lying, cheating, and stealing. How can you distort the facts? Look, if you're going to take some liberties with facts, I get it. You want to put your spin on facts. That's what advocacy is. That's what we do in court. So that's fine. But today it's just all. I was called a racist. I was called a whatever phobe and all the cobes and all this other stuff. And none of it's true. When you know somebody and then you get one. How do you make a lie believable? You take the truth and you expound on it. You take a little bit of a truth and you expound on it. And so politics is ugly today. And I always tell people that politics is not conducive for good people, but we need good people in politics.
I love it when you say that.
It's just true. We need good people in politics, first of all. But it's not conducive for good people. You need people that don't give a crap because they give a crap. Does that make sense? I'm not going to worry about being politically correct. We're just going to be genuine, going to be raw and real. Go figure. And just let the truth speak for itself. And I said that to the newspaper when they had a bunch of those scoundrels, and one guy, I don't want to mention his name, but he's not even there anymore. But he was a weak individual and a deceiver. And I said, look, if you're reporting the truth and I don't like it, shame on me. But if you're not reporting the truth because you have some agenda, shame on you, and then you and I are going to have problems. And I'm just not going to cow down to people that buy ink by the barrel, and people used to say, Nico, don't do that. For what? I was put in this position to be lovingly bold, to serve the community, all of it, not one side or another side. Lady Justice wears a blindfold, and I believe that at the core of who I am. I'm passionate about justice. I am passionate about pursuing truth and being a scavenger for truth. And today it's just a bunch of fake-ass politicians out there. Not all of them, but I was a crappy politician, but I like to think I was a pretty okay public servant.
Sitting next to me, George Araujo. George, do you ever see yourself as running for office?
Good question.
Tucker Carlson this week said that he has a deep, deep disdain. I'm paraphrasing. I'm actually saying it more nicely. For politicians. He finds the idea of being around politicians on a regular basis rather repulsive. And I have to say that I share that sentiment. I'm not a big fan of the idea, and I think that there's a lot of ways to do a lot of good, and I think shows like this one.
He's not a fan of the idea, but he didn't say no.
I was just going to say that.
To Mr. Araujo here.
I never heard the word no.
He's ready for politics.
What?
I never say never. I'm just saying I'm very disinclined to the idea.
And Tucker Carlson, the idea of having him in office, it's great because he's going to tell the truth, and he's also a truth scavenger. But then who's going to report on the truth?
Yeah, I don't know.
Once he's in,
Tucker Carlson is not my truth standard. I like Tucker. I think he's bold. I think he seems to be fair. But Tucker is not the truth to me. He reports things is apparently more fair than other people. And so I'm not saying anything bad. I have nothing bad to say per se. But I don't take on a position like, well, Tucker always. Dan Bongino says the truth, or this person says the truth, or Candace Owens says the truth. Look, I like the way certain people report things. I like a balanced and advocacy. I want both sides of an argument, and usually the truth is somewhere in the middle. The truth is where the truth lies. So I like that, and it's objective. So I like Tucker's style, but I'm not saying that he is the truth standard. He's just better than most.
It's funny on how people come to the conclusion of running, and this makes me think of the debates that we had with the GOP candidates, and you're thinking, should some of those people be up on the stage? Do you think that there were winners and losers, or do you think that we faced another debate with 4 people with big question marks above our heads?
Well,
why are they up there?
To me, who cares what I think? I mean, did the numbers change? Did they move the needle? It's all about moving the needle in your direction. It's interesting, you know, everyone's making a big deal about Vivek. And look, Vivek, I like the way he does interviews more than he debates. I'm just, that's my opinion. I think he interviews better than he debates. I mean, Chris Christie, even though that guy really makes me nauseous, but Vivek is irritating when he debates. His style would not be my style. I like the aggression. I love the facts. I love the speaking boldness into anybody, whether it's powerful or not powerful. Just speak the truth and let the chips fall where they may. But your presentation matters. And I, you know, writing things and this. I mean, I'm into, you know, demonstrative aids. I'm a trial lawyer, but I don't know. I don't like the way he debates more. I like the way he interviews more than he debates.
Nico and I haven't talked about this, so I'd like to probe a little bit more which parts he found irritating. I think, though, that you reflect what a lot of people say about Vivek. He seems to be pretty polarizing. You either hate Vivek or you just love the guy. I mean, I haven't really seen a lot of opinion in the middle, and I think you may be tapping into some of that. And but I'd like to understand a little bit more, like what you would consider irritating. Yeah, I know he put up that little flashcard there, you know, pointing to Nikki Haley. That's kind of childish.
Yeah.
True enough.
Maybe I'm too much of a trial lawyer. To make a point for yourself, or to make a point just for the hell of making the point, does it persuade your jury? I mean, and he's dropping in the polls for a reason. Now, what he's saying, I mean, I love the way he speaks truth. He's very he's always ready for. I mean, I saw some. I think I sent it to you guys. He did an interview with that CNN lady, Dana, whatever her name is, Dana. I think he did a great job of being calm with her, correcting her, redirecting her, giving her facts, pushing back on her. She wanted to get out of the interview. I mean, when the person's trying to change the topic, you know you're doing well in an interview or a debate or some type of advocacy situation. And he did that wonderfully. Now, I get the debate is more of a Royal Rumble, but it's a controlled Royal Rumble. They make it a Royal Rumble. And then it just I don't know if it's productive. I don't think those are productive to me. When more than 3 people debating, I really like 2. And I like certain parameters on debates. And I think I shared them last time, or a couple of weeks ago, or a few weeks ago. I just don't think they're productive. I don't think they're productive. Not the way they're done. You just don't get enough information, and then everybody starts trying to get a soundbite because they want to make the evening news, and they look like idiots sometimes.
Can we continue this conversation? Sure. Plus, I want to talk about the border. I've seen the new pictures and the new numbers. And then there was testimony in an anti-Semitism vote that went on with presidents of universities that shocked me. Hopefully, we will get to all of these topics and more coming up next on Sidebar.
With reputations as
Salo's in the house. Salo, how come you're not near a microphone? Is that the one working? Oh, good.
Is it on?
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. You're always the Vanna White
Wow.
of the show.
Man, I made it, guys. I
I got to make it a Mexican name. The Baña White. The Baña Blanca.
Do you guys watch Tim Pool by any chance?
No.
Not on a regular
Tim
basis,
Pool.
but I know who he is.
Well, 2 years ago, when Trump was running for president, I remember hardcore fan, right? Whatever of Trump. And I would watch Tim Pool. And Tim Pool hated Trump. He didn't like Trump. And he always talked bad about Trump. And he would give the reasons why. It was one of the first podcasts that I donated to. Because I would see podcasts and I did, they asked for donations, stuff like that. But I saw the way Tim Pool made arguments against Trump. And he wasn't being emotional. He was just like, look, this is what it is. This is what it is. And I was sitting with my wife and I'm like, babe, you see, this type of conversations we need. Even though I didn't agree with what he was saying, I knew that he was saying something from the heart, from his mind. and he was being very analytical, and I contribute to his podcast. Since then, now he's changed a little bit. So that's why we want to thank everybody that hears the podcast. And if you agree or don't agree, but you do agree that these conversations are very, very needed. And I like what Nico says a little while ago. We want to open the microphones to people that disagree with us, even in the comments. If you don't agree with what's being said, please, we're not going to be those people because there's people out there that have podcasts. If they don't agree with you, they block you. And they shadow you. It's been very interesting because I've been participating in different podcasts, and I give my comment, and then I don't see my comment anymore. Yeah. Somebody took it off. So that's not what we're gonna do. And if you think that these conversations are very needed, please, thank you for all the people that have become sponsors already. But if you want these conversations to continue, go to sidebartv.com, follow us on the different platforms, like us, share it to as many people as you can, and on that site, on that landing page, you can find a place where you can become a sponsor and help us out.
I have to admit that when I was watching the debate, I thought to myself, I kind of like Vivek only because I want to see what names Trump calls him. I'm just waiting for that.
I don't think he's never going to get that far. He's not going to call Vivek a Trump. I mean, he's not going to call him a name. I mean,
I want to see that. I'm like,
yeah. I mean, look, it was interesting. Vivek was he did a little gotcha moment. I didn't watch the whole thing. I just watched a lot of the clips. And didn't even know the regions in Ukraine. And then Nikki just her normal aggressive style. At least in that moment, she just kind of had a weird look on her face and
stumped her.
It did. And she just, she should have had some response to it. She should have been prepared better. Chris Christie didn't know anything about that situation either. I don't know if that's the end all be all. I mean, I support Israel. I can't tell you about the different provinces in Israel. I mean, you know what I mean? Someone could have said that. That should have been her response. Like, are you saying, can you name the provinces in Israel, all of them?
Ukraine.
You support Israel.
Ukraine.
I know. I would have given an example.
An example of that account argument?
I would have given it back to him. That would have been my retort. Just saying, you can't. So that doesn't mean that I'm not, just because I can't name a province doesn't mean that I shouldn't support them. I'm not saying that I support Ukraine. I was in my mind thinking how she could have responded.
But I honestly, with respect, I don't think that that's what he was going after. I think he wasn't, if she would have said that, he would have said, that's really not my point. In fact, I didn't
see give me the context. What was he
the context was, hey, you're okay with sending thousands, perhaps even hundreds of thousands of our innocent boys to fight over in Ukraine, but you can't even name a single province that you're sending them over to fight for. And I think there's an underlying criticism that is completely legitimate. He continued to call her a neocon. Look, I think Vivek was very successful. I do. Because not successful to the people on the debate stage, not successful to political punditry. And I'm setting aside present commentary on this, Nico, because I know where you're coming from. But I think he was successful, again, for the same reasons that he was successful last time, and that's because he is talking about vital, hard truths that people need to hear. And his criticisms of Nikki Haley were completely legitimate, and I dare say that he and Megyn Kelly were on the same page about the fundamental criticism. Hey, Nikki, Megyn said this, not Vivek. He simply built a bigger house on that platform. Kelly comes in and says, I think you came in with around $100,000, but you surfaced now, you're now worth $8 million. Exactly how did that happen? She never answered that question. She didn't. She basically took the easier part of the question, which talked about donors and how I'll take money from anybody. Okay, fine, but never addressed that question. Nikki Haley is one among hundreds of people in Washington, D.C., which is mired in corruption. I dare say not just Democrats, but Republicans. These are questions that dare not be asked, and people dare not answer them. And Vivek goes right into the middle of those weeds. And this is exactly where people want him to go.
Yeah.
So he's not going to be president of the United States. Fair enough. I think it's fair to say he's not going to end up on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue come September 20 or January 2025. Fair enough. And Nico, valid point. His numbers are dropping. He's not going to be president. Fair enough. Okay. But what he's saying is critical. It's the most important stuff on stage. Chris Christie is completely irrelevant. I mean, the guy's just an irritant at this point. 2.5%. What the hell is he doing on stage?
Yeah. Well, here, let's just. You brought something up that I know you're going to bring up.
Content.
I'm not for or against Vivek. I like what he says. Like I said, he interviews well. I love the issues and the topics he brings up. And I used to be okay with Nikki. I mean, she really just tanked, me. But I want to make sure we're careful. So she served in a political position. She got out. I don't know how long she's been planning to run for president. I'm not going to assume anything. But we're saying that she cannot make money. Are you saying that she made this money ill-gottenly? I mean, that she's, if that's a word.
What I'm saying is that it's a trend that you come in. I think it's a
Well, that applies to every president, except for Donald Trump. He's the only one that's lost money.
Exactly.
But I mean, besides President Trump, you've got every president for any position. You become, your CV grows. You speak. You get called. You put on this board and that board. You have, of course, you have influence. I mean, state reps do it. State senators do it. I mean, I'm not saying inappropriately. I'm just saying. So I just want to make sure we're careful. I mean, what are we saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this isn't basic economics. This is a surge from thousands to the tens of millions to the hundreds of millions. But when you look at what Barack Obama did, this is using him as an example. He came in relatively broke, and he surfaces with tens and tens and tens of millions. Nobody has an answer for that.
The Bushes.
We don't need to go to Bernie Sanders for this.
But I'm too much of a lawyer. But how did she make that money? And what are we saying?
That's the point.
You just don't know.
Nobody knows.
Okay, you're asking.
And that's all I'm saying. I have no problem with capitalism, brother. Trust me. And you know I don't have a problem with capitalism. So I've been blessed by capitalism. And plan on continuing to be blessed by capitalism. That's not the issue. And I think she has every right to be a good capitalist, and she should, and she has my support for it. The question is, most of us have to answer.
Just answer the question.
Most of us have to answer how. We actually have to provide proof for those things. And all I'm saying is that Vivek is tapping into a deep, deep concern that is shared by most Americans, that our politicians are deeply corrupt. And I'm not just talking about morally, and we've talked about that a lot in this show. But economically corrupt. Follow the money, and you'll be able to understand why.
I get your point now. It's a valid point. So what George is saying is, make the money. Just tell us how you made it. That's legit. I agree with you 100%.
Yes,
100%.
Okay. Follow the money. And why we make that parallel between what's happening in the Texas House, which is why I think people like your brother Mark LaHood need to be in there. Because I've complained over and over again, and I think it's the same issue in the Capitol, which led to McCarthy's ouster, is that you have truly conservative bills that never see the light of day.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how many majorities or how sizable the majority of conservatives in the House is. Do you notice that it doesn't matter right now? We have a significant majority in the House of Representatives, Nico.
Yep.
Why doesn't it matter?
I agree.
Somebody explain that to me. Do you think the Democrats would lose an opportunity to make that majority matter? They've shown they use those majorities. Hell, they're using their minorities. They're getting more done as a minority in many cases than we get done as a majority. Why is that?
Yeah.
And so I think the Vivek cuts to those issues, whether he's talking about economics or foreign policy or what's going on at the border.
But if he wants people to listen to him, George, he needs to take that interview style. And maybe it's because he knows he has limited time. I don't know what their strategy is. There's debate strategies, by the way. I don't know.
Keep going on that because I think that's the issue.
Because people need to hear him. He brings up valid points, whether you like him or not. Look, the guy has got Kuyan's biggest church bells. He goes into the Chicago areas. He goes on a podcast where he knows he's going to go into a turkey shoot. I mean, and you got to respect that. And that's why he was surging for a while. He was going into areas, even though it's not Republican primary areas, and he's engaging in conversation, which went on Bill Maher. He goes on all these things. I think that's great. I think it's very good. I think we need more of that.
And with that as an important exception, I think people are concerned that he is basically the conservative version or the right-wing version of Barack Obama. A guy who comes in with a really nice suit. He's very articulate, but he's completely hollow.
Yeah, that scares me.
He's completely hollow.
Are you saying that? Or are you saying that's the criticism?
No, I'm saying I think that's why when you have this polarizing, when you see this polarizing effect in people's sentiments towards Vivek, I think they fear that he is plastic, that he is largely artificial, that Barack Obama at the end of the day was an empty suit. He really was. He didn't have much substance to offer. Very articulate, and really campaigned as a moderate. But came in and governed to the left of Lenin in many ways. And so I wonder if people are just kind of, it's a reflex reaction to that. You know?
I kind of think I think the opposite. I think that Vivek knows he's not going to be president, and that's why he still sings the praises of Trump. I feel like sometimes he's the guy that runs out into the middle of, the war with both soldiers facing each other to take the bullet just so that at the last second he can get out the truth, whether it be climate change is a hoax or big tech stole the election or, whatever.
He's a very good interviewer, and he's gotten better. And George knows this. I mean, I pay attention. I listen to people that interview. I listen to debates. I'm public speaking. I listen and I watch how they give their message and what they say and their personality and how do they come across genuine and do they have facts on their side and this movement and this little quirk. He's gotten a lot better and he needs to keep doing it. I love when he goes on to these other shows and talks facts. I love when he goes on to podcasts. I mean, I don't think he's relatable because he's really intelligent and his voice is he's got that stereotypical, hey, he talks, I don't know what the hell that came from.
I mean,
Like
again,
Ben Shapiro.
the chat GPT.
Like Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro.
yeah.
Yeah, very
Shapiro's
voice.
Yes.
Same tone.
Yeah, that's a good one, Saulo. And I'm not trying to be overcritical. I think he's gotten more comfortable in his skin because at first it was really that was a good shot that Christie gave him a while back and it kind of stuck with him.
I think he's branded him.
Yeah, and it's kind of true.
I think the real star, I shouldn't, that's an overstatement. I think Vivek, if you have to say who actually talked substance, who actually levied charges, legitimate claims, charges against their opponents on substance, I think you have to say the man won, in my view. I do think Megyn Kelly did very well. I do.
She's grown on me,
She
man.
was an equal opportunity offender. She came out against Chris Christie and basically said, "What the hell are you doing here?" Ron DeSantis.
What did he say?
I'm paraphrasing here, but basically, look, basically about his criticisms of Trump, because this is all Christie does, and they keep him around for a little bit of drama. But I think there's an irony to this, and almost a kind of hypocrisy. Chris Christie sounds pissed off all the time and always angry. And yet his main criticism of Trump in the debate is that he's angry. I thought that was interesting and ironic.
Like pop, right?
And Vivek, of course, leverages that. He does that very skillfully. Vivek doesn't back down from Christie and actually came at him in Christie style and say, why don't you get the hell off the stage because you know you can't win. Basically, what the hell are you doing here? And go and enjoy your meal.
That was a shot, yeah.
Right? And of course, that's New Jersey. That's Brooklyn style, style jabbing, and he shows that he's not afraid to go there. And then Megyn Kelly basically charged back at DeSantis. She went after DeSantis and said, "Look, man, you're kind of dying in the polls here, brother."
Who? Yeah. Right.
Do you not sense that the voters are sending you a message? And then DeSantis says, "I don't really care about polls." Yeah, okay.
The fact that I think the mass media loves Nikki Haley makes her even more suspect to me. I'm like, ooh, why do they always say she's the winner?
You gotta follow the money with Nikki Haley. Sorry.
Okay, we're gonna start a new topic. We're gonna see what it is, but we will be right back, and we hope you stay with us on Sidebar. OAI.
Who's that, George? Who's singing?
I know.
That's Paula Abdul. Straight up.
Oh my goodness.
1989.
I'm telling you, man,
Oh
George
my
was Casey Kasem.
Right?
In his
Yeah.
1989, is that about right? Am I wrong, Kurt? What year is that? 1989? Yeah?
Yes,
you gave me a
it
thumbs
is.
up on that? Look at
That wasn't his thumb, but that's okay.
Stop it,
Girl, you
Nico.
do what
What's
you want,
wrong
brother.
with you?
What? There's a lot of things
He's
wrong.
pointing up. He's pointing up.
Hey,
His help comes from above. Right.
Before we change topics, I wondered, I mean, we've kind of already said it, but was there a winner in this debate? And if there was a winner, where does that put the winner?
Gotta love Karen. I said, as you stepped out for the break, I said to her, if we learned anything in this debate, it's that Nikki Haley is effectively eliminated. I mean, she really is.
She was before.
And,
right?
and I had a picture on my iPhone that I showed. I think this is really what she looked like throughout the entire debate. That's her expression.
look
And I
like a
had
win-
she just seemed deflated to me. She had nothing of substance really to say. She didn't have a lot of cute. I'm the only woman on this stage, and you should vote me because I'm a woman, which is a great hit from Vivek. People are sick and tired of identity politics, and Nikki Haley is going to be the conservative standard bearer, and she's also going to be what? A chief identity politician.
Yeah.
I mean, did she ever miss an opportunity to point out that she's a woman and that she's? Okay, thank you, Nikki. I appreciate that, but people are just sick and tired of our leaders aspiring to skin color and some other immutable trait as a reason to vote for them.
Right.
And Nikki Haley represents that, and people are disgusted by
Hillary
it.
thought she was going to win because of that.
Yeah, and I think so. Vivek hit all the right points, but I think she was neutered. And her polls seem to kind of show that. I'm tired of the surge talk, Nico, because I think it's a lie. There's no surge there.
Well, I mean, she goes up 2 points and it's a surge. I mean, it depends how you define it.
Forgive me, I'm not being very good at hiding my borderline disdain for Nikki Haley. I just don't trust her, and I think she's more of the same, and I think it's rather destructive for the country at this time. It's not neutral.
So DeSantis is still the governor of Florida, right?
Yes.
And so he's got a job. You said, I mean, I don't know why Chris Christie's still there.
Well, he's got. I mean, what's he going to do? He's trying to make. I don't know. Maybe it's going to help him with some speaking engagements to certain people.
Or
True.
a sponsor from Krispy Kremes? Maybe. I don't know.
You must be on the Vivek train. Yeah, I never take shots at people's.
Well, he takes shots at
Personalities.
everybody. So
Yeah, well, still, I don't. Just because he does it doesn't mean I'm
except for
gonna do
Nikki
it.
Haley, he took up for her, and that was kind of bizarre.
'Cause he has to, that's going to make him look like the knight in shining armor, and then she wanted to be saved. You can just see her posture was, "Come save me, Chris Christie." I mean,
No,
look,
what a misogynist.
I'll go at your behavior. I'll go at your ideas. I'll go at your speech, but I never go attack someone's way they look.
But listen what Nico just said. This is exactly what Christie and Haley joined forces on, which should make everybody really scared. That Christie basically said, as she did, that Vivek is anti-woman
That's stupid.
and that he has a woman problem. And the reality is this: anybody who listens, he doesn't have a woman problem. He has a Nikki problem.
her problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he didn't just say he had a Nikki problem. I mean, he decomposed his criticisms. I mean, he explained very clear what his criticisms were.
Carlos says that Christie is hangry.
Stop it.
That's what Carlos says.
Listen to them.
Carlos,
Stop it.
come on now.
So, I don't know. Do you have any of the latest numbers? I mean, as if it matters, really.
George,
No,
can you convince me that what I call? Oh my goodness, those numbers are real.
What numbers?
The numbers of the polls of who's up and down. Because, for example, I see all these other podcasts are growing in numbers. They're bringing in Vivek, all of these guys, and I see them getting convinced about Vivek. These different podcasters, and I'm like,
About the
everybody's-
podcast, those podcasters he goes on are not Republican primary voters.
I think what LaHood
What
said here
podcast are you talking about?
is how we ought to think about Vivek. I think what he said a few minutes ago is exactly right. He's not going to win the presidency, but he's not going away.
No, he shouldn't.
He's got important things to say.
Yep.
He says them very well. I do think he's an A-lister on interviews. His composure's the right composure. He's very good at toggling between topics. He's substance rich on those topics. He doesn't talk superficially.
Yeah.
He goes after, I think, the real issues that voters are deeply concerned about, like viscerally concerned about. And I hope to see more of them, not less.
Yeah,
Because I think that Trump, should Trump win, that he ought to keep him close.
Should Trump win? I don't know how he does it. I mean, look, anything can happen. The vote's not there yet, but
If he needs another bulldog, that's him.
Should Trump win? Not because I think that anyone who doesn't consider the lengths to which the current apparatus in Washington D.C. will go to keep Trump out is being naive. I think that they will do everything on the table and off the table to stop Trump from being president of the United States. And I think people need to just deal with that reality. About 3 or 4 months ago, there was a lot of assassination talk. I thought it was, and I think Tucker was talking in those terms. He was concerned about that. And I'm concerned about it. I am. I'm concerned that there's going to be a hit on Trump. I am.
God forbid.
So I know, I don't even want to think about it
against any
either.
of the politicians.
I'm very concerned about it.
We can't delve down into Mexico standards where politicians are being taken out. That's just. I mean, there's always some crazy people out there. And the threats are real. I mean,
what a sobering thing you say. What a sobering thing you say.
God forbid, brother. Against anybody. I don't want to see a Republican. I don't want to see a Democrat. I don't want to see people that I disagree with. Unless you're trying to hurt me, then I'm going to hurt you. But aside from that, I mean, I believe in self-defense, defense of third person, use of appropriate force in self-defense. I mean, I defend that every day and make legal assessments on that every day. But I don't want us to get to that. I mean, look how violent things are. That's why I love conversation. That's why I can't stand, and I will use the word hate, censorship. That's why I am almost a free speech absolutist. Because, and again, I think I said this last week, I hate jokes against special needs kids or people because I have a special needs son. He's on the spectrum of autism. I hate the word. I'm going to say the word retard, even though mental retardation is a legitimate assessment because of the way it's been used. I hate it, but I will defend vigorously anyone's right to make jokes about that. I hate when people make fun of my faith of Jesus Christ, but I will defend your right to do it. Absolutely, I will defend your right to do it. I mean, I am almost a free speech absolutist, which, except when it comes to genocide and when it comes to, asking people to hurt other people or supporting violence against other people like we saw in those universities.
Before they move to that measure, do you think bringing 2.4 million migrants into the country as possible voters may be attempted first? I think there was record numbers that came this week.
If people can't see the writing on the wall, and we're seeing it, when you have all of these sanctuary city hustlers, these saying, how dare you not welcome these people in? We welcome you here. And now, have you heard the governor of New York?
Oh, yeah.
Go somewhere else.
Yep.
Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, it's too expensive to live here. I mean, you guys, I'm also on the flip side of that, not going to be that guy that says, hey, you stupid MFer, this is what you get. See what you get? No, I mean, I want to point out the flaws in your idea, and I'm going to champion with you. Say you were wrong, repent, and then let's champion together to fix it.
But they're not doing that.
Well, I'm just saying, but you're seeing ideas have consequences. These were crappy ideas. I remember I kept going back to 1995 with Bill Clinton during the State of the Union address when he said the greatest threat we have is illegal immigration. Now, that's an idea that was championed by a Democrat president that I agreed with then and I agree with now. It doesn't matter if Bill Clinton says it, Donald Trump says it, Pelosi says it, or Hillary Clinton. It doesn't matter who says it. It's true. So this immigration issue, I'm telling you, I have become, like I say, the closest to a one-issue voter ever in my life. The border, we don't get the border under control, my opinions about abortion, DEI, gender, capitalism, freedom, my faith, all that doesn't matter because we don't have a border. We're just, trying to survive, and we're not.
Yeah, and again, you got to think it's one of several big prongs against detaching America from its past, and I'm very worried about it. I mean, the numbers are just absolutely staggering. I mean, we broke another record with the greatest number of people coming in any one day into the country. I think just this past week, we're probably going to hit around 250,000 people coming across the border in the month of December. These are just stunning numbers. This is totally unsustainable.
But watch who's coming in.
That's exactly what I want to bring up all the time.
No, brother, it's not. You're right. It's not just Venezuelans.
No.
It's not just Guatemalans.
Nope.
It's not just Mexicans.
Nope.
We have people that are coming in that come from countries that are decidedly hostile to the country, and if you can imagine getting into a military conflict in the future with certain countries, these individuals are coming from those countries. We've had tens and tens of thousands of Chinese nationals. That
Their
have come
armies are
across the
already
border.
here.
Yeah, and these are not old ladies. These are men of military fighting age, and these are the. We've mentioned it a little bit in here in terms of a lot of individuals showing up on the international terrorist list, and we're seeing a surge in those individuals. When Trump left office, the number of individuals that were on the foreign terrorist list, international terrorists that had come across the border, according to the CBP, were zero. In 2021, that number, this is shortly after Biden's inauguration, that number went to 15. In fiscal year 2022, that number went to 98. In fiscal year 2023, that number's at 172. Okay, from 107, all you need is one.
Yes.
So these are individuals who are actually on the international foreign terrorist list. And then there's those individuals that the Customs and Border Patrol has reported are affiliated with terrorist organizations or terroristic individuals. And those numbers, I think the last report was around 74,904. So just under 75,000 individuals across the country that have a link to terrorist agencies, or terrorist organizations or terrorist individuals. Never mind the tens and tens of millions. If you have just those, and the government is just completely asleep at the wheel. And so what's going on?
Yeah.
Really,
What's going on?
What's going on here when we have bills coming, bills that are put forward in the House of Representatives that tie Ukraine aid to measures protecting the border, and the White House says, what? Not really concerned about the border at this time, but you better fund Ukraine, because if you don't, innocent or young American boys might end up fighting in Ukraine. Can you believe that kind of blackmail?
That's disgusting.
Yeah. Well, we're going to continue.
What's
we
going
have
on?
one more segment here on WOAI, but we will continue afterwards. Go to sidebartv.com and find your platform. We'll be right back.
George.
1200 WOAI. This is Sidebar. Yes, please play Steve. This is our last segment here on WOAI, but you've got to remember that we definitely will continue.
It sounds like there's always something there to
George,
remind me.
what's up with
What
you,
is that?
George?
Is that 1986 or 1987,
My
Kurt?
goodness.
Is that Naked Eyes?
Oh my goodness.
Not
Is
even
that
Kurt
naked
knows.
eyes?
When he didn't answer it, I saw his mind
I
going
know.
through
He's like his library started
Yeah, his
going.
library is like,
His database.
this is Casey.
Oh,
Kasem.
somebody made a comment about, I think it's Diana. She said that she goes, Annette. Annette says, I encourage anyone who have not already, check out the Tucker interview with Alex Jones. 1.5 hours, right? But well worth the time. Did you hear it? Did you see it?
I heard that they did an interview, but I didn't see it.
Well, they provoked. This is what they provoked. That interview provoked. Thank you, Annette, because it was an amazing interview. They provoked for Elon Musk to pay attention to Alex Jones' account. Because back in the day, when Alex Jones was making comments about talking about free speech,
Sure.
they deleted him from YouTube and they took him off Twitter. So Elon Musk goes in and says, I need to check that out. And then he puts, that's not a valid reason to take Alex Jones out of Twitter. So they bring him back. It's going to be very, very interesting because He's got, what, 85% success rate in all his conspiracy theories?
Is he? Has someone actually put a number to it?
No, I don't know. I'm joking, right?
Okay, well, I mean, I'm so detailed when it comes to when you make claims.
Right.
Sorry, I just
Well,
can't.
they say that 32.3% of statistics are invented at the time that they say them.
I believe that. Tell me, where'd you get the 32%?
It was Mark Twain that said, "There's lies, damn lies, and then there's statistics."
Yeah.
And you could make statistics say anything you want to say. I think this is a true. It ultimately comes down to the future of America, the quality of our government, limiting government, and movements to go in the opposite direction of what the country was founded on right now. That's the kind of election that we're dealing with here in 2024. And I fear that the American populace has never been so unvirtuous and so ignorant, which is exactly the opposite of what our founders had in mind in terms of preserving America the way it was
this
founded.
experiment, they wanted a
it.
populace that was educated, so you're not subjective to being fooled and lied to. And they wanted virtue, because if you're virtuous, that means you know how to treat your neighbor, and you don't need the government to step in. And the government was limited in their role. So secure the borders, make sure the roads are good, and make sure there's law enforcement so we can enjoy our debates and we can open up our businesses and we can live life and go to the store. I mean, that the government was limited. This administrative state explosion over the decades is going to be the downfall of this country. This is not our founding recipe for this experiment.
And I know people often say, Nico, we present a lot of issues that are going on in the country, and sometimes we talk a lot about the problems, and it seems like sometimes we don't talk enough about the solutions. But I know what we've done here on Sidebar is we've consistently urged people to take seriously if there's any kind of impulse or urging that they have, if they're believers, if they feel that God is calling them to truly become part of a school board, to become part of that dialogue, that is probably one of the most important things that you can do. That's not just an empty call. That's actually true right now. It's never been this important. This is how you change the country. We lost the country or we're losing the country because we've lost the American classroom. We're going to regain the country by regaining the American classroom. That's the only way it's going to happen. It took a long time to build America. It did. And I worry that if we lose America, it's going to take a long time to get her back. It's not a couple of weeks. I want to go back to James Madison. We both like James Madison a lot. Fourth president of the United States between 1809 and 1817, following Thomas Jefferson. He's known as the father of the Constitution and father of the Bill of Rights, rightly so, because of his pivotal role in both of those documents. This is a critical statement that I think people ought to avail themselves of from our founding father, James Madison. Quote, "I go on this great Republican principle, that the people will have virtue and intelligence to select men of virtue and wisdom. Is there no virtue among us? If there be not, we are in a wretched situation. To suppose that any form of government will secure liberty or happiness without any virtue in the people is a chimerical, meaning a fanciful idea." 3 points: virtue and intelligence. We got to be educated. Yep. We really do. And this is what he means by intelligence. He's not talking about IQ. He's talking about knowledge and understanding. We have to be virtuous. We have to be educated, because what that does, it ensures a limited government. People who are virtuous and people who are educated don't need taskmasters. They don't need a bloated government. There is an inverse relationship between a virtuous people and an educated people and the size of government. That's the point. And what we are seeing is a wretched, depraved, and perverse government essentially be a reflection of their own people at this point in the country. I hate to say that about my own country. Nico, I'm sorry. I'm carrying on.
No, it's all right. Keep going. I mean, but all I'm saying is virtue, by definition, is behavior, how you treat your neighbor, essentially, right? Behavior is showing high moral standards. The problem is, George, is we don't even agree on what's a moral standard, which is all this anti-Semitic talk and this genocide talk, and people not have the guts and the guts to stand up against that, and these presidents of these universities. So when you say we have to be virtuous, okay, what do you mean? I mean, we have to treat our neighbor with a high moral standard. Don't lie, cheat, and steal. okay, I guess, unless it serves my agenda or my purpose. And then, and do you know? Remember, I used to always joke about what was the virtual standards in our society up until recently. Nobody liked that Will Smith slapped Chris Rock during the Academy Awards. I mean, everybody thought that was terrible. Okay, great. If that's our BS standard, I'll take it. We'll start from there. How do we get there? Well, that's another discussion. Now, it was the whole Israel attack by Hamas. People were disgusted by that. Now you see the shift because these very creative people are with the same Antifa movement, the same BLM Incorporated movement. They're getting and they're igniting these very, and I say this as respectfully as I can, ignorant kids. And then there's a debate about doxing these kids and showing them who they are and don't hire them and they're doing this. And then presidents are afraid of the kids more than the donors. And now the donors are pulling back and now they're correcting. I mean, we are just, we don't know what the hell we believe. No, we have no standards anymore. We have no standards. So you can't pray on a football field, but you can advocate for genital mutilation. You can't talk about God in classroom, but you can walk around the school celebrating Pride Month. You can't go on and on. We don't know what the hell we are, who we are, and what we believe. So when we talk about we have to be virtuous, before we get there again, we have to talk about what we think are high moral standards. That's how you fix things and bring people in.
What an excellent point. What we have now are vestiges of the American ideal. Just like we've gutted the concept of equality and replaced it with a counterfeit concept of equity, which is based on ensuring equality of outcomes, which is not equality at all. The Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, those concepts of equality are based strictly on your dignity as a human being before your creator. But we've bastardized the concept of freedom as well. And you can't have true freedom without virtue. It's impossible. It's literally impossible. And Nico's right. Virtue is goodness and self-control and godly morality and responsibility in your behavior. And it's being unselfish. And what we have now is licentiousness. That's what we have. It's it's basically a casting off of total restraint, particularly sexual restraint, where you basically then give in to your lowest impulses. And that is what's being taught as freedom today. We teach it in the American classroom. We do. And this is then seeded in American culture. We graduate these individuals. It becomes part of our corporate framework. It's protected in human resource manuals. This is societal now. And the idea that we're not going to elect individuals who are unvirtuous, are you kidding me? We have a significant corruption problem in Washington, D.C. We also have a substantial sexual perversion problem, not just in the culture, but also in D.C. There's been reports on that. And so what we have now, Nico, is exact opposite, where freedom is licentiousness. You just do whatever the hell you want to do. And actually, that's self-slavery. I mean, if you don't care about what you do with yourself, you're not just going to impact yourself, you're going to impact your neighbor. And so this is where we are today. And so play that out. Where do we go from here? And we have a party that's wholly invested in this kind of licentiousness. Because why? Because if you can be licentious, if you can be totally out of control, you absolutely will require government to step in at some point to control you. That's the point. There is a direct relationship between licentiousness and big government, and there is an inverse relationship between virtue and big government. We are founded on the latter, but we are now doing the former, and there are serious consequences for that. And that begins to change in the American classroom. Don't look to your politicians for help. Look at your own home, how you run your own home. Look at taking responsibility for your children. Do you know what they're being taught? Do you have conversations at home about what they're being taught? Do you get involved in the community as it pertains to education? Because if not, this is the time to do that.
And be consistent about those. The experiment is in the house. I mean, that's your laboratory, and then you send them out to the world and see where they're at. And so that's why I don't coddle our kids. Our kids have to learn to do something physical. Yes. They all do, except for Michael, because he's on the spectrum and he can't follow a class. But they all do wrestling and jiu-jitsu. They do striking arts. I want them to understand combat. They have to know violence. Sorry, I'm not saying they lead with violence. I'm not saying that they react with violence. It's a response, not a reaction. They have to know Christ, number one. They have to know that we can set our standards from outside of mommy and papi. It's transcendent. It's from the creator and the architect of everything. That's the way we raise our children.
Amen.
That truth matters.
Yep.
That we have to love our neighbor as ourselves. You have to love yourself first. That speaking the truth in love is good, and being aware of people's considerations. Meaning you're not trying to hurt people's feelings, even when you're speaking the truth in love. Hard work pays off. Take a setback. We don't call them losses. It's a setback. I mean, you lose when you quit. So you take a setback appropriately, and you know that God can use it. And what did you learn from it? And you get back in there. But I don't want to. I don't care what you want to do. I don't feel like it. Your feelings are gonna fail you. And so and look. And sometimes you're like, oh crap, this experiment's not working out, or hey, you're just doing okay. And then you get the report back when you hear how they respond in community. And I'm sure my parents said, man, our experiment sucks. Our kids getting arrested over here. I mean, when I was growing up. That's just the way it was. But but there's a course correction when I change the way I think. So I always tell people, and I'm involved in the social experiment called the justice system. You want to change people's behavior? To me, it goes back to Proverbs 23:7. As a man thinks in his heart, so he is. Meaning you'll never live beyond what you believe. You want to change people's behavior? Change the way they think. You want to change the way someone functions as a daddy? Change the way he believes his duty is as a daddy or husband or whatever, or employer or employee, whatever it is, or a citizen. Look, guys, we're going to, I know it's already time. We wanted to talk about Hunter Biden and the indictments. We want to talk about those presidents at University of Penn and Harvard. We're going to do that on the after show. So if you're driving, pull over and get your phone out and get online and get on our Facebook or on sidebartv.com. And we'll be continuing this conversation for another 30 or 40 minutes. Thank you for joining in. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful weekend.
Okay, so which one are we going to start with? I do want to ask about those professors at Harvard. I do want to talk about Hunter, though, because that's just kind of ridiculous and almost embarrassing. But so if you say that the citizenry of America must be educated, but then you watch the professors that are giving their testimony at Harvard, University of Pennsylvania, MIT, and they can't answer questions when it comes to the Middle East because they don't want to get on one side or another. That is what you're talking about when you say, if you don't take it into your own hands as parents, this is who is educating your kids. Yeah, look, education and parenting used to be a handshake. When I was growing up, at least. I mean, if you did something in school and to your teacher, I feared my parents more than I did the school. Absolutely.
I mean, that's just the way it was.
Yes.
But now, I mean, I see it. Parents are almost mad at the school for not doing their job for them and raising their kid. And then number two, when they do it a different way and they have to be the bad person, and they get pissed off at the school because they're a scapegoat. I mean, and then the school systems just suck altogether. I mean, just the way they throw everybody into alternative school, no matter what, for the due process. The due process thing sucks. If your kid gets accused of something, they're going to go to alternative school, unless it's a private school and they have the balls to do something different than whatever's supposed to happen in their little bullshit process. But I mean, it used to be a handshake. It's not that way anymore because there's not an agreement on how you should raise a child. There's not an agreement on the rules of engagement of society. It's just not anymore. And Republicans, just look at politics 15, 20 years ago. I mean, everyone had kind of the similar ground rules, and then they differed on some of the higher things, and then debated them, and they still went to dinner together, and Tip O'Neill and all these other people, and there was friendships and true, genuine friendships. I mean, I think you see that. I was always touched by the friendship between Justice Sotomayor and who passed away right now?
Clarence.
No. Well, Clarence Thomas. He didn't pass away. Sorry. And Clarence Thomas. Thank you. I was thinking of Scalia. Yeah. And Clarence Thomas. I mean, it appears to be a genuine and beautiful friendship of mutual respect with tremendous differences in their ideology. But I mean, I've heard her defend him, and they speak very highly of each other. That's how it should be. Passionate disagreement, but good, well-meaning intention for each other, and knowing people as who. I mean, I have heated debates with people in my office, and we love each other, and we truly do. It's friendships, deep friendships, and we battle in courtrooms, and we've walked through political battles together. But yet
But you love the law and
we love-
your
that's absolutely.
interpretation of it. I
And
get it. I
advocacy of
get
it.
it.
And practicing it.
Yes.
Practicing it well. We left off on the nuclear family at the bottom of the hour, and I just really believe that's the hope for the country, reinstituting that. The communist left has worked very hard and has been very successful in disintegrating the nuclear family. There's a sacred role for mothers and fathers. Each of them bring very unique benefits to families. And that should be encouraged, and a good government would do well, and a good government has done well to preserve those things and encourage those things in the country. But that's not happening anymore. I mean, it really isn't. And so if you think about it, where do you learn to restrain those impulses? Where do you learn to not give in to your lowest impulses? You learn that at home. A mother and a father will teach you that internal self-control is necessary. And it's necessary for you to govern yourself so that you can ultimately have a self-governing people. That's been taught in the home. Now there's confusion about what a mother is. Now there's confusion about what a father is. Now there's confusion about what a man is or what a woman is.
Or what breastfeeding
This is a
is.
very deliberate,
Right.
this is disgusting and nasty and unbelievably destructive. And it's hard to see. It's hard to see how you can come back from that. You're not going to come back from that with referendums. You're going to come back from that by teaching one child at a time, by showing up at one school board meeting at a time, by winning a school board election at a time.
By one conversation at a time.
Yeah, or one
Have
voluntary job.
conversations.
Exactly. This is how we're going to get it back. You got to get the American classroom back.
And not allowing it to paralyze you as a parent because of what's going on in those classrooms.
Yeah, but why though, Karen? It's an interesting comment that you're making. I think it's true, but why? Why is there paralysis?
Because people are afraid to speak up if the teacher, if it weren't for TikTok and Instagram and clueless teachers feeling, emboldened to hang up, the LGBTQ flag and not think that there's something wrong with that, it has become norm to some parents that aren't involved in their kids' upbringing. So if you, as the conservative parent, say that's not going to happen, one, I believe it's paralysis. Yes, I think it's a good decision to pull your kid out and put them in a Christian school, but not everybody has that choice. And so some parents
That's why school
may...
choice matters.
Right, exactly. Some parents may feel like, oh, I'm the only parent that doesn't feel like the LGBTQ flag up there it doesn't belong up there. But if I say something, what's going to happen to me?
Well, it's they've lost the establishment of the authority over their children. And so I went to lunch late yesterday, later than I normally go. I normally go around 12:31, whatever, but I went later. So I just sat by myself and I was listening to a podcast. I just try to always be productive. I need to get more books on audio, and so I was just there listening on my own in a booth eating, and at my place, and I listened to these three teenagers. They had to have been 16 because they're driving, so it had to have been 16 to 18. And this one, and I deal with this all the time, so it wasn't shocking. It just was a reminder while I was eating lunch. This little girl was laughing and talking about a fight she got into with her mom, and it turned physical. And I'm waiting I almost gave her my card. Hey, call me if you need me. But it was, and the way she was talking about her mom, and I'm just gonna say what she said. She goes, "And this fucking bitch, she was out of her mind and saying this, and then she trusted me, and then I said something, and she was laughing at me because she knew that someone was gonna call the cops, and then this, and just the way she was, and they were reasoning through this, and I was fighting myself to say I want to hear more about this. I mean, you guys are talking loud enough. I know you probably didn't want me to hear this, but I'm fascinated by it. Can I listen in? Can I ask you questions? Who's this old dude trying to talk to us? But I didn't, of course. But I just listened, and I just said, this is what I deal with every day. This breakdown in morals, in decency. It's a word we don't use, decency to people. To be decent to people you disagree with. Again, and decency and morals and amicability doesn't mean weakness. I mean, you can be that person, and maybe it's a martial art training or that martial art mentality where you bow, you shake a hand, and then you go to destroy, right? You can turn it on and off. So that doesn't mean be weak. And I think there's this lack of understanding about what meekness is versus weakness and strength.
and true masculinity, and how this country is suffering from the lack of men being, to me, a true man is a biblically minded man in ideas and principles, and what that really means, and what it means to be a strong woman that works in conjunction and with a man to raise a family. And that traditional, forget about conservative, it's just traditional. I mean, Democrats believe in a traditional family, at least they used to, old school ones do at least, in a traditional setting, and this beautiful interplay between man and woman, to create life, by the way, the only way to create it, but also to nurture a child and raise them up in the way they should go, so when they get older, they won't depart from it. Doesn't mean they won't sway from it, Proverbs 22:6, but they won't depart from it, meaning tear away from it. The anchor of your upbringing, the anchor of the foundation, when that anchor goes out and you leave boom, it'll stop at some point, and that anchor pulls you back, kind of like a Luke 15 anchor when you think about the prodigal son. So we've lost all of that, and then churches are castrated. No courage in the church, minus few. There's a handful of them. Don't get me wrong. Our church, I think CBC does it well. And there's other churches, and we go to Hillside, but I mean, there's churches out there, and there's Pastor Flowers, and I don't want to start naming names, and you leave someone out, someone gets offended. That's not my point. I mean, there's a lot of good pastors, and I'm thinking of them in my head. All I'm saying is, but as a collective whole, is there this synergistic front that we should try to go win hearts and minds back to a traditional family unit? Doesn't mean that people don't have the freedom to live their lives the way they want to. See, there's how things get taken out of context, because I believe in freedom, but not freedom to destroy your life, freedom to live your life. There's a difference. Again, these are deep conversations, Karen, that people don't want to have, and they can't have them because they don't think deep enough about them. But you can't live in a soundbite. You have to unpack these concepts and these principles, because how are you going to live out something you don't understand? And then that's just what we're dealing with today.
And you can't, and because it's so easy to offend people. You don't want to offend anybody today. It's like the cardinal sin. Nico and I were talking after R-Rated this past Thursday that's sort of the unspoken 11th commandment, the other 11th commandment, which is you shall always be nice, and if you're not nice,
thou shalt not offend.
God forbid you're not nice.
Yeah.
I mean, God, you don't violate the law of niceness. And I think that's where we are today. You can't even. I remember being in a conversation. This has been going on for a long time, and in fact, this is even before I came to Texas, maybe 20 years ago. We were talking about concerns about the deterioration of the nuclear family, because this has been systematic and it's been incremental. It didn't happen 2 weeks ago. I remember having a conversation, and I was at lunch, and there was a woman that was sitting next to me, and she and I, from everything that I knew, were on the same page about everything. I didn't know she was a single mom. Karen, I know you can relate to this. And we were talking about the nuclear family. Mm-hmm. And I remember that I was carrying on about how, God has given men and women unique roles that are precious roles.
Complementary.
Yeah, absolutely. And these things should be celebrated. You have, and I'm just characterizing this in these terms to make the point, but at the tough love of a masculine father, right? And you have this nurturing tenderness of a feminine mother. Now that's considered heresy today. And I remember I was talking about it in those terms, and I could sense that this woman was getting uncomfortable. She was almost getting offended. And she, out of nowhere, she goes, "Well, I'm doing my best." And I had to kind of just sort of regroup and say, I don't know what you mean. I didn't know she was a single mom. I didn't know. And so I needed to just kind of insert and say, look, there's a lot of single family parents that are doing their best, and they are raising their children in a nurturing, virtuous, and educated manner. I didn't mean you per se, but that's not the ideal. Would you argue that's the ideal? And I asked her, I said, that's the argument I'm making.
Yeah.
And then she stepped back and she goes, no, that's not the ideal.
Thank
I said,
you.
That's the only point that I'm making. So two things can be true at the same time. Sure. You can say the nuclear family is the ideal. Here's why. It's certainly the biblical standard. This country was built, and we had government and policy that actually got behind it and supported it and flourished while that was the ideal. And when we've strayed from the ideal, and as we certainly have, the number of single-family homes has just ballooned. And what I'm suggesting here is, and the social research will bear that out, is that there's a social consequence to that, and it's not a good consequence. And while
you know, I happen to know you, Karen. I hope you don't mind me saying it. I know you're a single mom, and you're a damn good mom. I know you.
All I can do
But
is
we're
try.
taking applications for her dates.
And I know
you
you're.
can send them into sidebartv.com, preferably
Let's do
breeding.
that right now.
Remember, I have
anything
very
under
high
100.
standards.
What?
Elf Louise has nothing on this. Let's do
It
it.
does not discriminate.
Yes.
You know, it's so funny.
Parent suitors, line up.
It is so funny that you say this, and this is horrible, and I don't even want to give who it is that I'm talking about, but another single mom in my life got a divorce, and recently dad's been diagnosed with like terminal cancer. Horrible. But one thing that he did that I was like, holy cow, that is amazing. For the last couple of years, I think it is, he has sent this woman a Father's Day card on Father's Day to acknowledge that now he realizes that she was having to do both jobs. And it was, I mean, it makes me emotional to think that, but it's horrible. It's horrible that some moms have to do both of the jobs, but
Well, we castrate men, we demasculate them, and then we bitch about them because they're not.
Yes.
Men. I mean, it's confusing as hell for kids. We got to get back. Look, when I talk about traditional family values, those aren't necessarily. They never used to be conservative. They were just traditional.
I know.
It was. I mean, you had strong people in both parties and every kind of. They believed in the value of both sexes, of male and female.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole women's suffrage and the women's movement. I mean, women should be celebrated. I mean, I'm even before I had 2 daughters. George has 3. You have 2. So women should be celebrated. They are fearfully and wonderfully made by the architect of life, which is God to us, and they're unique, and they should be protected and celebrated, and not stolen from some man who is not happy being the way God created them.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be flippant and
No,
condescending.
I get it.
Because that's where people get snarky and all this. You know, leave all that shit out. Let's just talk very logically. Let's just talk very matter of fact. I had a very, very good conversation with somebody. I don't want to say who it is. It was someone that used to be one of my teachers in high school, and who has since come out as living the homosexual lifestyle. And we just had a wonderful conversation. We ended up over lunch, and he knows exactly how I feel and my faith. And he shared with me the struggles of growing up in that era, of having these proclivities, and you know, having to hide them. Grew up in a traditional family and all this other stuff. And he professes his love for the Lord, and it was. I won't say too much of the conversation because I don't know. Even though I'm not mentioning this man's name, but those are the conversations that we should have. It was the love. I gave him a huge hug after, you know, squeezed him hard. He knows I love him. I appreciate how he taught me in high school. I'm glad that we've reconnected after decades, you know, and I hope we stay in touch, you know. And so, but we have to have these conversations lovingly, very matter of fact, logically, and not trying to break the other person down. Now, when you start affecting my kids, I'm going to get a little bit more passionate, right? So we're going to, and I'm going to respond to your aggression. So that's where we lose it, because then one person gets here and then you have to respond. You don't want to be a doormat. So we just have to say, can we come into the arena of conversations? And that's why, again, I respect Bill Maher so much. I disagree with him on many, many, if not most things, but on the things I agree with him on, I really agree with him on. But he encourages this discussion, and he's a comedian. He's got to be a little snarky, and he gets passionate, but never disrespectful. And he always rebounds the train, and his conversations always end appropriately. I really respect. I think he's an important voice, and he's an important venue for people to. I mean, he's had people that he just passionately disagrees with, and he seems to always find something to agree with somebody on. But I mean, I love that, and we need that more. I can't stand. I love free speech. We've got to be able to have it, but we got to couch it in the sense of not to where you're pushing genocide. And we never taled about those universities, but I mean, that's where you have a moral a breakdown in which you can.
But I think the two are completely related. And you said a lot there.
I know,
you
sorry.
brought up the university presidents and Maher in the same sentence, and I think that it's, I don't know if you intended it, but they're all part of the same movement in the country, same set of problems in the country. We have Bill Maher, who couldn't be any more diametrically opposed to a Trump presidency, but yet agrees with Trump really what we've been talking about here over the last 30 minutes, and that is the fundamental problem that our American educational institutions are teaching kids to hate themselves and teaching kids to hate their country.
Yep.
He totally agrees with Trump on that, completely. Now, that's a big point of agreement. That's not insignificant. It's not just some issue. That is fundamental. That is a huge platform of common ground. For Bill Maher to come out and say, look, I know why why Democrats are in trouble. We actually teach kids to hate themselves.
Yep,
We teach
he
kids to
said it.
hate their own country. and he says, I understand why Donald Trump's doing well. And because Trump has come out and actually has put, really a depraved educational system in his crosshairs. And I would hope that should he be elected, and may God grant that he would be, because it would be very good for the country, that in fact he would make that a priority, Nico. That in fact that he would make a total gutting of the Department of Education and a release of the ideologues and really America haters inside that organization, through which appropriation to schools is metered. I hope that Trump would follow through on that, and that it would come down to the grassroots level and affect administrators and staff, and really admission standards. I was reading a piece by Victor Davis Hanson that he was basically complaining, and rightly so, that Stanford and Yale have boasted about the fact that they're basically minimizing the number of white people that attend the universities.
Yep.
This is outrageous. That's obviously complete racism, but it's seen as a badge of honor, And how have we gotten there? And these are the same institutions, the presidents of which, I think, who was it that testified? The president of Harvard, the president of University of Pennsylvania, and the president of MIT. And hiding behind the First Amendment, they actually thought it was okay for students to say the kinds of things that they're saying. These aren't students that are voicing disagreement with Israeli policy. These are students en masse who are crying for Israeli genocide.
But these are the same people that squelched the First Amendment. Yeah. These are the same people that had this mind virus of microaggressions and all this other bullshit. I mean, this is the complete illogical. Look, hypocrisy is a cornerstone of the left. They're proud of it. Whether they want to admit it or not, now they're getting more bold to admit it. It is a cornerstone that we've got to be hypocritical because they're illogical. They want you to react to your feelings. They want to live in sound bites, and they are fundamentally founded on hypocrisy. Yes. Because these people, silence is violence. These are these people. Well, and speaking is violence. And then if you don't agree with us, we're going to shut you up. But and they stop conservative people from coming onto their campuses to talk. That's right. But yet they don't want to shut up these people. I mean, they're so illogical and inconsistent, but that is a cornerstone for them. They have to be, because they're not going to win a debate with you on logic. It's all flashy. I've seen some of these, and there's some of these guys, and I forgot this one dude's name that was debating Jordan Peterson. He claims to be a pastor. He happens to be a black dude, but he was a real famous debate they had a while back. And he talked in his magnanimous words, and and I said, what the hell did you just say? He says a bunch of bullshit, and it's all emotion. It's all race. He's a race hustler, and I can't remember his name. I just saw a clip of it the other day, but this is what they do. It's sound bites. It's emotion. It's pizzazz. Look at Gavin Newsom. He's got pizzazz. Yeah, some bitch has got it. He's got it. Whatever it is, he has it, and he's not using it well, in my humble opinion. But that's what we're dealing with. So this university issue, I mean, I'm glad they're getting this backlash. True. You're seeing this issue with anti-Semitism really create a rift in the Democrat Party, and they're being forced to deal with and to wrestle with their morals as a party. Where does it end? Because if these university presidents would have said what they said or didn't say what they said against any other ethnic group, fit in Mexicans, fit in black. Yep. You can say anything about whites, obviously, but I mean, that's the hypocrisy of these idiots. But fit in any other ethnic group, and people would have gone apeshit.
Do you think that it's going to change when the donations stop coming in? Do you think that's
eventually? I think that's how this is going to work. These are huge endowments, and they're filthy wealthy, and that's beginning to change. And I think you're absolutely going to see it, and may it continue. But I think until that changes, until you actually change it, you're never going to change this country. And elections are only part. They're a start. They're part of the solution, but they're nowhere near sufficient. We have to have policy that absolutely requires public educational institutions to teach American history, actual American history, that teaches Americans to respect their founding fathers and to understand what their founding fathers actually did. But the whole story, because our founding fathers were imperfect individuals, right? Everyone has sinned. That includes our founding fathers.
Romans 3.
They certainly had imperfections. They certainly had blind spots. But what they managed to do, by virtue of being students of history, Nico, these were men who understood history, and they weren't all Orthodox Christians. They spanned a spectrum of faith. Some of them I would consider nothing more than rationalists. I'd probably put Ethan Allen in that camp, a religious rationalist, maybe a John Adams, certainly a Thomas Jefferson. But all of them,
they weren't Islamic, they weren't Hindu and
no,
Buddhist.
of course not.
I mean, so let's
They're
make
valid.
sure that
they all ALL
had
pushed and supported
Judeo-Christian
a
values.
Judeo-Christian set of principles and
that-
value system. That's critical to
Misleading.
understand. Absolutely. And we got to get back to that. We got to teach it. We got to teach kids to respect it. And let's face it, we keep going back to parents. Parents are fundamentally part of the problem, but parents also come out of the same educational system.
So does that
Right?
mean that the founding fathers didn't have sons that bought prostitutes, used drugs, and didn't pay their taxes?
Well, let us assume for a moment. That they did. You had a society that would quickly stigmatize that. Quickly stigmatize it. And,
Yeah.
and that's what we don't have today. What we do is we stigmatize the good, and we endorse debauchery. We endorse decadence, and that's where we are. And the question is, how do we get back from that? And there's just no easy solution. We know how we got here. We know how universities became, what Victor Davis Hanson calls incubators of primordial hatred, I think is what he calls it. We know how that happened. And so how do we get it back? We need to work backwards. There's no fast way to do this. Kids don't think factually because they don't have facts at their disposal. They think reflexively. You mentioned Thomas Jefferson. All they think about Thomas Jefferson is
Slaves.
he was a racist, slaves,
Yeah.
and Sally
Yep.
Hemings.
Right.
Yep.
Right? You think George Washington, well, he was just some white European dude who was a racist.
Yep.
They don't have any facts at their disposal. All they have is reflexes. That's all they've been taught. And then you combine those reflexes with outright anger, and you got a powder keg. And so that's all we've done. And we've taught the next generation of Americans to be angry, anti-American, because remember, Jews are considered white. Demographically, they're considered white. So they're thrown right into that pool. So they're anti-American, anti-white. There is a deliberate effort here from the Democrat Party to incite a racial war in this country for the purposes of destabilizing the nation so that they can reassert more and more power controls over the people. That's what this is about. That's never going to be possible if you have an educated people. It's never going to be possible if you have a people who are willing to govern themselves. I have a quote I'd like to share, and I'll shut up. This is from Edmund Burke. He was an English philosopher, a contemporary of our founding fathers, late 18th century. Sorry, let me just share what he wrote here. Quote, "But what is liberty without wisdom and without virtue? It is the greatest of all possible evils, for it is folly, vice, and madness without tuition or restraint. Men are qualified for liberty in exact proportion to their disposition to put moral chains upon their own appetites." Let me just say that one more time. Men are qualified for liberty in exact proportion to their disposition to put moral chains upon their own appetites. To the extent you're willing to control your own life, you are qualified to truly experience liberty and freedom.
Isn't he the same guy that said the only thing that is needed for evil to succeed is for good men to do
stand
nothing?
and do nothing.
He's the same guy,
I
right?
believe it's Burke.
Yeah, I thought so. Said the name. But that's it. So we're supposed to do something, but what are we going to do something with? It's not enough just to be a clang and some tambourines just yelling for the sake of yelling. I want people to yell and speak with a purpose and with a solution. It's very frustrating, especially when I was in office and you get all these people with these wonderful ideas that are very good at a bitch session, but they're not a solution session. If you're going to complain, which you have a constitutional right to do, I like to say do it effectively, but then come with a solution. And that's why I guess going back to kind of full circle, we started with Vivek in those debates. I don't think he debates well. I mean, George is classifying as a win is he's bringing up ideas and conversations and pushing back. Yes, that in and of itself, exposing all that stuff is a win. But maybe my definition as a win is if the verdict, like I've used examples before, unless the verdict comes back the way we say, the way it supports our side, doesn't matter how good the cross-examination was. Doesn't mean how wonderful your opening statement or your close. That was a marvelous closing statement. Great. But if you don't win the verdict, it doesn't matter. So that's where I come from, that mindset.
What would you have considered a win for Vivek in your debate terms?
Not to hand over the mantle of being a dickhead. I mean, he just comes across that way. I mean, look, it doesn't. I'm not as a fan.
I'm trying to think of a metric how we would measure that.
I don't know.
Is there a dickhead metric?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I'm just saying it comes across that way. But you know,
even though he says the right things, he's that guy that you have worked with or you went to school with that just rubbed you the wrong way.
Well, maybe
that's what it feels
Karen.
like.
The environment he's in a debate, and they've attacked him before. So is there a little revenge? I mean, you got to don't lose your audience. So he has the debate, and I understand it's a different dynamic. I get it. But then he has an interview right after with a CNN
and he's
host.
like, relax.
And he nails it, man. He knocks it out of
know.
the park. He knocked it out of the park. He was perfect. I mean, I was close to perfect you can be. He was effective. When, like I said, she's changing topics, then you know that you're winning your discussion. And it's wonderful that he gets to expose those ideas. Now, how many people are going to see that interview versus the highlights from him? And it's all going to be highlights. And so when you're in office, you know that you're living in highlights and sound bites. You have to be very strategic. When I first did my first interviews on news or whatever, I'd go into these long explanations, and then somebody pulled me and says, "Hey, boss, you know they're only going to take about 30 seconds of that, if not 20.
Yep.
It's going to be a 2-minute clip." It's like, oh, I better. And then you have to make sure you say what you want them to. You have to there you go. That's the term, exactly. I'm glad you said it. You self-edit, meaning you know you want to say all this, but only this is going to make it. So you be very specific about what you say and how you say it and what message you're trying to come across. And so you just learn that as time goes on. It just seems like he's going in the other direction when it comes to debating. Interviews, like I said, I think he does very, very well in interviews.
I listened to every word you said, and then it occurred to me that this debate didn't matter one damn bit.
Oh no!
Not only did nobody know about it, it was on News Nation.
Right.
I think it was the best monitored debate to the extent that Megyn Kelly, I think, did her job and did it effectively. She didn't leave anything off the table, in my view.
I gotta go watch it now.
And
Me too. I haven't watched it.
I thought that her going after Vivek, it was kind of tepid relative to what she said to the other candidates. You would think that Vivek would have been a target-rich environment for Megyn Kelly, but I don't think I didn't really see anything point
before.
Yeah, I didn't. I just would have expected her to come after him a little bit more doggedly, a little bit more pointedly, and I didn't see that. I mean, of course, she brought up the stuff that we're talking about right now, but I thought he handled it well. I thought he responded to it well. But you're right. There's a visceral dislike of Vivek, and on debates, I don't know that he does anything to help himself.
Saulo, you're going to get a kick out of this.
Except
say that last part.
Except again that he gets himself into hot water with the ChatGPT persona, but I think he gets himself out of hot water because the stuff that he says connects at a deep level with the average voter.
And let me see how he's right. Because in the same debate, you've heard him be passionately booed and horrifically cheered.
True. That is so true.
I mean, think about it, because it's weird dichotomy here.
Good point.
But so I think that's a very good observation, George. But Saulo, remember our friend Anthony Pastello, the one that's commenting?
Yeah.
Well, him and I exchanged text messages last week, and we've actually agreed to go to lunch. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. We need to do. We need to do stuff like that. Express your feelings. Hopefully they're logical, as respectful as you can. Passion, not emotion. I always advocate. And then be open for a conversation. And he was. And we actually sent me his number. We texted in. We're trying to get our schedules together for a weekend that's open, because during the week doesn't work for him. But we're both looking forward to the film. And look, I mean, I don't know whose life is going to change or not, but I want to always model what I'm advocating. And I have. In politics, I've always offered meetings to people, and very few people have taken me up on it. Very few people, and until it happens, I mean, Anthony's one that's expressed his willingness to. Hopefully, we follow through with it, and he says yes to continue to say yes. But we need to encourage more conversations, not just get on school boards, but encourage the people that's going to be on the school board. Influence people. Be an influencer. An influencer. You don't have to have 1 million followers to be an influencer. All you need to do is influence the right person. If you're an influencer to the president, if you're an influencer to the mayor, if you're an influencer to the DA, if you're an influencer to the chief, if you're an influencer, then you're a very
You're influencing
powerful,
millions.
Yes,
Right.
So, and we don't look at it that way. And not everybody's going to be Rocky, but everybody can be a Mick in somebody's life. Rocky 3, Rocky 1, Rocky 2. I mean,
It's been that way through human history.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
So you don't like
you've had-
Vivek because he's Trump too?
I never said I didn't like him. Why did I say that? See that?
You just
Yeah,
don't
are?
like the Trump part of
Are you a
Vivek.
Democrat?
You don't like the Trump part of
No,
Vivek.
I never said that either. When did I say that?
Well, his personality. That's what I think.
I
the
said-
way he carries himself, the way he does debates. the way
Debates.
he-
All I've been criticizing is debates, right? And in
Yeah.
his style and his presentation at times. I've complimented him very much on interviews, on his boldness, on the willingness to go into hostile territories. All that I celebrate, but I don't dislike him per se. I just I'm criticizing his debate styles.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I think people are left with picking the type of style that they can live with. I feel the same way about Nikki Haley. Just her. It's like it's almost like she was constantly saying the wrong thing wrongly. You know, when Vivek, because you can say the wrong thing correctly.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah, that's
Barack Obama mastered the art.
Yep.
It's
a good word.
You go after Vivek goes after Nikki on the donors, just as DeSantis did. I was scrolling through to find out where this clip was, because I remember it hit me and I thought, is she tone deaf? Did she not just listen to herself? So they attack her because there's just been a huge influx of big donors supporting her. Oh. And she says, well, in terms of these donors, when basically defending herself, this is her defense. In terms of these donors that are supporting me, they're just jealous. They wish that they were supporting them. And I'm thinking to myself, did you realize what you just did? You actually called it a really great thing that these huge donors, the Koch brothers, which are decidedly anti-conservative, these are neocon, faux conservative influencers of American politics. They're huge Bush supporters, and the Bush name is kryptonite today. And she doesn't realize, tone deaf, doesn't realize that she is calling it a badge of honor to associate herself with these big donors, and that you're just jealous because you don't have big donors. Well, that's precisely their criticism. You just walked right into that pit and didn't even realize it. Whereas what they're saying is, look, we're seeing a lot of grassroots support. $2, $1.50, $3. She gets a $250,000 check. Not that the LaHood campaign would balk at a $250,000 campaign. In other words, there's a way to say what she should have said. She could have said, look, I'll take money from anybody. Shoot, I'll take money from the devil. I'm not going to do the devil's bidding, but if he wants to give me money, I'll take money from the devil. I'll take money from anybody. But that's not what she said. She said that that you should be jealous of me because I'm getting all these donor supports. And she didn't realize that basically what she said is that she associated herself with a lobbying group, a funding group in American politics that is deeply disdained by the voters. Because at the end of the day, they massage votes away from conservative policies. McCarthy was ousted largely because he was deemed as doing the bidding of these individuals, these lobbyists. There's a deep visceral hatred for the individuals that Nikki Haley is associating herself with. And so I don't know. I think she's tone deaf. I don't think that's a mistake Vivek would have made. I think he would have said it more artfully. Maybe he would have sounded like ChatGPT, but he would not have said that. You know, maybe I think he would have
because he would have realized what it meant.
He would have framed it in a way, at least, where maybe something to the tune of what you said. Somebody wants to give me money. You give an example of how some conservatives came to you and asked you if you were aware that there was a LGBT organization that had supported you, or that announced their endorsement. And you said, so what's the problem with that? And then you use the Jesus example, which I think is a powerful example. Give me one example where Jesus turned down the endorsement of a sinner.
That's right.
Right? I mean, which is an excellent response. And I think that that's the kind of thing that Vivek would say to something like this. And I don't think that Nikki Haley, she should have the political acumen to steer out of that that moss pit, and she didn't. She actually.
Well, what you say, because I got big donations too. What you say is there's no behavior or control tied to those donations. That means this organization or person has more money and more resources than this person, but they're supporting an idea. They're supporting what I'm trying to accomplish in office. Not even really me. It's what I'm going to do in office per se through me. I get that, but there's no strings attached to this. You don't get. Obviously, if somebody's
Unlike
the
your
big donor, you're going to maybe go to dinner with them or whatever, and you're going to have conversation with them. But there's no the behavior tied to this. Yeah, there's no direction or control tied to this. That's the response, you should say. So I'm honored to get their support, but they're supporting me. I'm not supporting them. And so they're supporting what I'm trying to do for everyone else. So they're really supporting you because what I want to do for you. So that's how that's how I would have tried to handle it. But what are you going to do?
I read someone, I can't remember the guy who wrote the piece, but I like the way that he worded it. It was something to the effect of that, because Vivek was jeered with quite a few boos. And I remember him saying that
Until he wasn't.
That Vivek seemed perfectly comfortable with it. He seemed perfectly comfortable with it, playing what he called the bad boy again, and yet another debate, because he knew that his comments were landing with the force of truth. That's how it was.
To me, it seems we'll kind of end on this point. I think we're already 40 minutes in, so we're going to wrap up. But to me, it seems like he's playing to be right in 2 years. When people are like, see, Vivek, back then you were right. Yeah, a guy called it all on the vaccine stuff and the masks and this and
Climate
the viruses,
change and
all this other stuff. Yeah. He's already starting that mantra when he was in that interview and says, look, I'm the one that was saying that Ukraine all this time ago and these people. So I was right back then. I'm right now. And let me tell you what else I'm right about. That's to me. I don't know. He wants to be an influencer. I think he wants to be a voice because he's not going to be president. There's no way he thinks I guess maybe he thinks he's going to be, but then he's not a practical person. But whatever. He's in this for whatever. He's got a lot of money. I'm glad he's a voice out there. I like when he goes out and debates and not debates, but when he has conversations and goes on interviews. And look, in the end, let's see. You're not the nominee to the nominee. So I'm always going to be open to anything can happen. And if these people are playing it out because of all the things that President Trump is dealing with, then that's a strategy too. There's got to be somebody here to be standing when the dust clears and when the smoke clears. If there's smoke per se, then I get that. That's a strategy too. I know I'm behind on the polls. I'm not going to win in a final vote against Donald Trump. But if I'm not in a vote against Donald Trump, someone's got to be standing there. True. That is a strategy, guys, whether we like it or not. So that's why they're in it. But I don't know why Christie's still in it. All right. All right. Look, with that, we're going to
2.5%. But I mean, again, but you got Nikki at 10 nationally, and DeSantis at 13. That might as well be 2.5%.
Yeah.
I mean, when Trump is at 64% or whatever.
It's so funny.
I don't know.
It is what it is. We'll talk about some more stuff next week. God bless you guys. Thank you for joining in. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you share with people that either agree or disagree. We'd love to hear comments from you. We'd love to have a situation. Look, and we're going to do this one time. We've done it on R-Rated Christianity. I'm just going to say it now. There's going to be an opportunity at times where we're going to just have maybe a screen in front of us. I know Salo monitors some of the comments. Karen had tried to before. We love interaction. And so we may just do an after show one time where it's just complete discussion. Open question, whether it's about the show we talked about, something else, personal questions, political questions, professional, whatever it is. Let's just. I think that's important. Do we do that on R-Rated every once in a while? I think it's important to do that.
Great idea.
God bless you guys. Thank you for joining in. We really appreciate your support.